Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello everybody and welcome to the Daily Newcastle podcast. It's me, Michael Grahamson, I'm your host today, and I'm joined by Iain Mackay. How's it going, Iain?
It's going great, Michael. Are we on The Price is Right? Because that was a fabulous Leslie Crowther introduction you've done. Nobody will know who Leslie Crowther is. I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I've got a smile every day looking at that Premier League table and weighing up the games still to be played.
Cracking stuff. I mean, you've got us down to finish in second, and I think on behalf of every Geordie in the nation, if we managed it, it would be a fantastic season. But before that, we do have the small task of some club from Manchester at the weekend. As this is going out on Friday morning, our listeners will probably have a bit more of an idea what to expect after Man United's fixture with Lyon on Thursday night. It appears that ahead of our game, Lissandro Martinez, Amad Diallo, Matthias de Ligt and Kobbie Mainoo will be out for Man United. Four big names. We'll speak about them maybe a bit later on. But my question to you, Iain, is obviously we mentioned some names missing there for Man United. But overall, that squad isn't great. But have the tables officially turned in Newcastle United's favour to the point where it's almost undeniable that Newcastle United have a better squad than Manchester United at the moment?
Oh, Michael, you're pushing at an open door asking me a question like that, aren't you? To be fair, I thought we had a stronger squad when we met them in the Carabao Cup 2 years ago. And I certainly don't think that Newcastle have gone any further down since that. In fact, the togetherness of that team, maybe because there's nobody other than Tonali coming to it, is stronger. And Manchester United have continued to slip. The guys last night on from Man U that we did on the crossover pod said this season they were hoping to improve on their worst Premier League finish in the Premier League era where they finished 8th. And they're not going to get anywhere near that.
No, nowhere near. It's definitely improved, but the number, and it's not really the number that you want to see improved. But what I do want to sort of go through, and in the first part, is just to create our own side-by-side best 11, because I have a feeling there is a potential of Newcastle United doing an 11-0 sweep. And if we do, that's quite awkward. But if we disagree, I am going to try and be less biased, let's say. I am going to be biased, but I'm going to try and be less so. And if we disagree, we can put it to the audience and, well, actually, I don't think we'll disagree. But we'll start off with Andre Onana versus Nick Pope. Now, what do you think about Manchester United goalkeeper Andre Onana?
Oh, well, considering he's been coming to the team because he's meant to be really good with his feet.
Yeah.
No, he can suddenly ping a 60-yard ball that somebody takes down and controls immediately. Those Hollywood passes are very few and far between, though. I think he's a good shot stopper. I don't think he's as good as Nick Pope.
No,
a bit on Eddie Howe's side where he thinks Nick Pope's the best shot stopper in the league. One thing that Onana wins hands down is the likelihood of a rick, the likelihood of a real clanger being dropped. I watched quite a lot of Manchester United in last year's European competitions, and it was dangerous when they went 2 or 3 goals ahead, because that seemed to get to Onana, who was determined single-handedly to try and end up with a draw, however it worked. Some of them were well. I was speechless. On his day, he's a fabulous keeper, but I'm not sure he can play a full 90 minutes without 1 or 2 errors of judgment, shall we say.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think his debut was a good indication of that when they played Wolves. Wolves should have had a penalty from an absolute clanger from Onana. And I think it's interesting that Matic came out, former Man United player, basically said that Onana was the worst Man United goalkeeper in history. Now, I don't really think that is the case. But would you say in a combined 11 between Newcastle and Man United, Nick Pope gets the edge over Andre Onana?
I would say Nick Pope and Martin Dubravka. Probably John Ruddy gets the edge over Onana because, to be fair, you're giving the away team or you're giving the opposition a goal start if you have Onana in goal, I think.
Ooh.
I know that's a bit harsh, but just let's look. If somebody else can be bothered, and I can't because it would mean I'd have to watch all the Man United's games, but that's what it seems like.
Yeah, I agree.
It's always been written about. Onana's at fault for that one.
Yeah.
No good.
Yeah. And the next one, I am going to say, is probably it's probably the most competitive out of all of the lineup, in my opinion. Maybe a couple others. Diego Dallo versus who will be all right back on the day, Kieran Trippier. What do you think?
Um, I still think, certainly the form that Trips is in, put him alongside the Trippier that was playing for the last 10 minutes against Everton last season, or the last 5 minutes against Chelsea in the Carabao Cup quarter final. Dallo
Yeah,
is excellent. I think Dallo's a good defender, but I think
agreed.
Trippier's a better defender. But there's no competition in terms of going forward. That's where Trippier's at.
Yeah,
Where he's at a premium.
this is
His
bread and butter.
his crossing, his dead ball delivery, fantastic. Dallo's not. Dallo's a fullback, I think, isn't he? He's not a wing back. He doesn't go up and
Yeah,
down. Doesn't go past players very well. No, I think Trippier's in there. Sorry, Dallo. I rate him. He's a good player, but not as
yeah,
good
I
as
agree.
Trips.
I think Dallo's probably one of Man United's standout players, to be honest. And it's strange because when he signed, he was hated by Man United fans, but he's really grown into that role. But I do agree, Trippier on form is definitely over him. Now, I could do one centre back versus one centre back, but I just want you to pick two from these four players: Fabian Schär, Lenny Yoro, Harry Maguire, and Dan Burn. Who would you go for?
It wouldn't necessarily have been the same in previous seasons, but I
Mm-hmm.
would have to go for Bernard Shaw. They're in form. They're playing fantastically well at the moment.
Yeah, I agree.
Um, really good, really good. Shaw's got his form back. His crossfield passes and his long balls are really coming off. And Harry Maguire is very good at that as well. I think Harry
Yes, yeah.
Maguire has really recovered. He's a strong character. He's really recovered from the joke that he'd become almost 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm not picking our two just because I don't rate either of the other two. I quite like the look of Yoro, but I don't think he's performed for long enough for me to know what his real standard is. But I have
Yeah, I'd
seen him
agree.
play really, really well.
Yeah, I think in 2, 3 years' time, we probably do sit there and say, oh, you know what? Lenny Yoro in 2, 3 years may be better than what Fabian Shaw and Dan Burn are now. And
Correct.
to be honest, I love Harry Maguire as a player. I actually wish we'd signed him a few years ago when we were linked. I think he's a fantastic defender. He just doesn't suit that Man United, the way Man United play. And to be honest, I say I would have loved him to sign for Newcastle. He probably wouldn't have suited the way we play. But it suits Dan Burns, so we could have made it work for Harry Maguire. But I do agree. At the moment, I would say Fabian Shaw and Dan Burn. But I do think a couple of years ago, Maguire probably would have got in, and then in a couple of years, Euro would have got in. So it is 4-0 currently to Newcastle, but this was a lot tighter, I'd say, in the defence. Now, on to left back. Obviously, Man United have their new signing from Lecce, Patrick Dorgu. Newcastle United have the player who we originally said had no left foot, and then has turned out to have one of the best left foots I've seen. Well, it's a bit of an overreaction, but a very good left foot in Tino Livramento. So the new signing Dorgu for Manchester United, or the revelation that has become Tino Livramento for left
Again,
back.
got to be Tino, England right back. Although it looked as if Lewis Hall being missing could be a real spanner in the works for the rest of the season. But who
Yeah,
knew that our class England right back would be even better playing
that's
on
a
the
left back.
left?
Yeah.
because he's better going forward playing down the left. Whether that's because he can cut in and use his right foot, but
Mm-hmm.
we've seen him overlapping. He put the cross in for the goal in the first goal in the Carabao Cup. He
Yeah.
put the cross in after 2 minutes for Murphy to have a simple tap in at the back post. Him and Barnes seem to have a really good understanding in the same way that Hall and Gordon have a good understanding. But I
Yeah, I'd
haven't
agree.
seen Hall and Barnes match up like that yet. But
No,
I
I would
think
agree.
Dorgu, by the way, has looked a good player, but he's
Yeah,
still settling in,
100%.
isn't
Yeah, he's really energetic, really good player, but probably not on Livermento's level right now. Now, the the whitewash is the one that's got no chance is probably Casemiro against Sandro Tonali. I think we're both agreed on Tonali, yeah?
he? Absolutely.
Yeah, it's some Casemiro. If you get compared to someone who works in a kebab shop, you're probably not going to be anywhere near the level of Sandro Tonali. The other one in midfield, the one that probably needs explained, obviously Man United play with the back five. Their third centre back is the one that's a bit more advanced, Noah Mazarawi. I've compared him alongside Joe Linton, just because Joe Linton's been a third centre back at times for Newcastle this season. Mazarawi or Joe Linton, obviously very different players. So it is a difficult one, but that was sort of the matchup of I've kind of got to just put two together.
Right. Well, I think that's harsh on Mazraoui as well. He's another young lad who
Yeah.
looks very, very promising.
Mm-hmm.
But Joe Linton's a vital cog in that midfield. I
Yeah.
call them Brunaliton now, Michael, because I think all three of them just come as one. It's one machine. It's so well balanced
Well
that
oiled, yeah.
you'd have to pick all three of them to play in the midfield. And I don't know where
Yeah.
that leaves Bruno Fernandes, but he wouldn't get in Newcastle's midfield.
No. And I've put Bruno Fernandes in one of the more advanced positions
All right.
alongside a couple of others. The remaining centre midfield position is Bruno Guimaraes on the Newcastle side, obviously, against Manuel Ugarte, obviously the former PSG man, now Man United midfielder. Do you rate Ugarte, or is he nowhere near Bruno's level?
Well, Bruno is the best midfielder in the Premier League, in my opinion, when he's on his game,
Wow. Yeah.
because he's a leader as well, and I think the
Mm-hmm.
whole team feeds off him. He's an emotional player, but you need that, I think, to overcome the adversity of, for example, a two-legged semi-final against Arsenal or a
Yeah.
final against Liverpool. Um, I do rate Ugarte. We spanked Manchester United in the first half when we went to Old Trafford
Mm-hmm.
because they started with Ericsson and Casemiro in midfield, who just got
Yeah.
completely bypassed and overrun. It was Ugarte who came on and certainly plugged a lot of gaps and made it a lot more difficult in the second
Yeah.
half.
They looked a lot better.
And there's the most direct influence on second half finish 0-0.
Yeah.
I know there was a large part of us just containing things because we had a lovely win there. But
Mm-hmm.
Agate is a great player. I just
Yeah.
don't think he's a
100%.
Bruno Fernandes. He's a Bruno Guimaraes yet.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And then in the front three, there's probably one that's well, actually, I say Casemiro versus Tonali was one-sided. You've got Rasmus Højlund and Alexander Isak up against each other. Isak is obviously the winner
He's like,
there. So we have the two wings, or the two centre attacking midfielders, should we say, for Man United. Garnacho, who's been playing more frequently on the right, so I've paired him up against Jacob Murphy. What do you think about that one? The young Argentine versus arguably a cult hero at Newcastle right now.
cool. It's, mm, yeah, that's a close one.
Yeah.
Garnacho is currently in apparently when he's been playing on the left and starting, he's very selfishly keeps cutting in
Mm-hmm.
and having shots that either go into the back row of the stand or spin off the top of his foot and go out for a throw in. Now, I did see him do a few of those against Nottingham Forest. I think he had 6 shots from outside the box, none of which were on target. Um, that was him coming off the left. Point they made last night was they want Garnacho to come off the bench, either left or
Oh.
right, because he's much more effective coming off the bench.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Straight matchup with Jacob Murphy and starting on the right hand side. Um, It's very close.
Well, I tell you what, shall we
I
give
think
Man United?
I think if he's out of form at the moment, if Garnacho is out of form and low on confidence, I'd have to go
Mhm.
with Jacob Murphy, who's the
Yeah,
exact opposite. He's playing
yeah,
out of his skin because his confidence is absolutely sky high. And he
yeah.
still yet might get an England call up, Mike. You might have been right there.
I think it's going to happen. It's got to happen. But what I was actually going to potentially say is, should we throw Manchester United a bit of a bone and say we do the same as we did with the centre backs and throw the wingers in together? So you'd have Garnacho, Murphy, Bruno Fernandes, who I'm aware is more of a central player, but he is their attacking player, and Anthony Gordon together. And then I imagine it would be Fernandes and Gordon.
Well, I tell you what, if you left Gordon out, because I don't think he'll start tomorrow or
Yeah,
Sunday, I
could
think
say
it'll
Harvey
still be
Barnes. Yeah.
Bonds. I think I would then have Fernandez and Barnes.
Yeah. That's perfect. To be honest, that works perfectly fine with me. And that means that Newcastle United don't have an 11-0 clean sweep. Told you we weren't going to be biased. It's instead 10-1, which unfortunately won't be the scoreline at the weekend. But if it's anywhere as dominant for Newcastle, we'll be very, very happy.
I
And,
think
well, on that,
what one thing, Michael, just before you whiz to the advert, which is so late, honestly, it's
we have a lot
it's,
to talk about.
it's later than one of Casemiro's tackles. This advert. Um, if Ahmad wasn't injured, he would
Yes,
definitely play right wing instead of Murphy. He would be in.
100%.
And if Martinez wasn't injured at centre half, I
Yeah,
think I would find a place for him at centre half, probably with Byrne,
okay.
because I can't have two short asses playing centre half. I've got to have a big galoot to head something
True.
clear. But I really do like Martinez as a centre half. We hope that he stays on the pitch for the whole game because he is prone to the odd red card, isn't he? But I
Yeah,
do
just a
rate
bit.
those players. But they're injured, so they weren't considered for our combined 11.
Yeah, exactly. Now, on that note, let's go to Bioniq.
Your body is unique, and Global Sports Podcast Network has partnered with Bioniq, the world's most personalised supplements. Bioniq provide 100% tailor-made supplements designed to deliver precisely what your body needs at exactly the right levels to optimise your health. No guessing. So click the link in the show notes. Use the code GSPN 2025 for 40% off your first month's subscription. Bioniq. Don't settle for off-the-shelf solutions made for just anybody. Get what's right for you right now. Your body is unique, and Global Sports Podcast Network has partnered with Bioniq.
We get it. We've partnered with
No,
Bioniq. We don't need to get it to. I'm going to assume there's a loop on that, and you know what? There is a loop on Newcastle United beating Manchester United. We're currently
what
on
a
our
link!
best. We're
A
currently
link.
on our best run of fixtures against Manchester United since 1935, when Newcastle won 10 out of 18 games against the Red Devils. And that included a 7-4 and a 7-1 victory. 14 goals in 2 games against Man United. Oh, I could only dream. Now, those days are obviously long gone. Newcastle have won 4 of the last 5 between the two since the Cup final. And the game that we did lose was obviously the game that meant Newcastle United didn't get European football last year. So when the stakes are high, Manchester United have still gotten the better of Newcastle. But considering Man United are dwindling their thumbs in the bottom half, the stakes aren't high. But would you say that this is the worst Manchester United squad in your memory?
Well, what I'd say first, Michael, was what the hell were they doing with their thumbs? Twiddling their
Dwindling.
thumbs.
I said
Dwindling.
dwindling instead of twiddling,
Yeah,
didn't
that's
I?
okay. Yeah, sorry to pull you up on it in public, but
Hey, dwindle
I'm not, I'm that
works.
sort of a prat, so I did it. I'm sorry, but I genuinely didn't hear what you said. Is it the worst Manchester United side that I've ever seen? Did you say? Because
Yes.
I did, I didn't, I wasn't there, but I remember watching it on Shoot. For anybody else who used to
Ooh.
watch ITV in early 1970s, I remember watching the highlights of Newcastle beating Manchester United 4-1 when Manchester United included Bobby Charlton and George Best in their team in the season that Manchester United were relegated. Now, I don't know when that was,
Wow.
72, 73,
Around then,
something
yes.
like that. I'm not sure Dennis Law was playing, but that was a team full of stars, but obviously full of stars that were waning at that point because they dropped um, into the old second division at that. Certainly, in my memory for the Premier League, this current Manchester United side, as it is way exceeding their worst ever finish last year, must
Yeah.
be one of the poorest sides ever to represent Manchester United. However, I would say that the Ten Hag led team that we played in January had a lot less of a clue than Ruben Amorim's side 3 months later on. I do
Yeah.
think, genuinely, if you look at the results and you look at the performances, that you can see green shoots coming. The hope for Man U is all in these young kids that are coming through,
Yeah.
orchestrated
100%.
by Bruno. Um, and if you take the one or two old heads leading a team full of hungry, ambitious, super fit youngsters,
Yeah.
then Man United are a coming force. Might be 2 or 3 years before we see them fighting for Champions League places again. But I do think that's the way to make a battle of it on Sunday is to
Yeah.
bring Collier in. I can't remember the name of the centre forward that Tom was saying he wanted to
Obi.
take Hoyland's place. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And it might be a time for them to do that because
Yeah.
our observation was that Manchester United's season relies on them winning Europa League, and they're playing now tonight,
Yeah.
Wednesday night. They're playing next Thursday night. Sorry, Thursday night. They're playing next Thursday in the second leg. So all we need is for tonight's game to finish quite close, and I think a lot of the older hands might well be rested on Sunday, which will make it even more, which should give us even more confidence of a positive result.
Yeah, and to be fair, you just mentioned Manchester United are obviously playing now as we're recording this right now, and I can actually just report. Obviously, everyone who's listening will already know this, but Leon are currently 1-0 up against Manchester United, so it is
Oh, really?
arguably, yeah, it's a perfect start if when you consider for Newcastle on Sunday, because Man United are gonna have to throw all guns and go all guns blazing at that next tie. So hopefully we see a few more of the young guns against Man United, because I would love to see us decimate them. But you spoke about the Man United squad there, and you mentioned one player in particular, Bruno Fernandes, alongside those youngsters, sort of leading them forward. And he's always a worry for me because I think he's such a weasel that if there's emotions running in that side, we've seen what Bruno Guimaraes is like. We've seen what Joe Linton's like. If someone gets under their skin, you can't see that anger come out. And I think the only way they beat us is if they get in our heads and we make those mistakes. And Fernandes is going to be a prime version of that. I'm more fearful of the anger of our side than his ability. He is a good player, but it's one of those. Do you think potentially? I know we're a professional side. Eddie Howe always has us being professional, but do you think Fernandez is going to look at the likes of Bruno, Joe Linton, and go, I could probably get under their skin and maybe give Man United an advantage? Because they're going to need it.
He could try, but I mean, do you not think that McAllister would have had a little bit of a go at that in the Carabao Cup final?
He was too busy trying to mock Dan Burn.
Uh, there are players
It's a
like
good
that
point.
in every side, Michael. Players like that in every side. Um, you know, I'm sure the Leicester players were. It was a tactic for them. What do you call him? Ndidi
Yeah,
is a player just like that. It didn't get close enough to him to do anything
true,
because it was
true.
just so much more superior. Um, I think Man United will give us a better game than Leicester did for sure.
I think they
Whoever
have
they
to.
pick, but I don't think our boys will fly off that. I think it's more likely that Fernandez will get frustrated and disappointed by Man United going a goal or two behind in the first half an hour. That Fernandez is more likely to get a red card than any of our midfielders.
And
You
you've
heard it
just
here
answered my
first.
second question. My second question was, do you not think that the Newcastle midfield might have the exact same plan? So you've already answered my question. Where
There you go.
chemistry, wavelengths, we know all about it. But one player who actually is on the same wavelength as Ruben Amorim this season is Patrick Dorgu, the left back. We mentioned him earlier, and I really like him. Signing from Lecce, I imagine it's because being at a smaller team in Italy, you don't really have the massive egos of a Casemiro, for example. And he looks like the only player who actually wants to give 100% and really cares. So maybe that's just the reason I like him. But I think he's a fantastic player. But then at the same time, I'm looking at our left backs and I'm thinking, Dorgu's great, but I don't think he'd probably be third choice behind Hall and Livramento. Maybe even Trippier gets in there, but it's hard because this is the first time I've really looked at a Newcastle defence and go, that's really good in most positions. Obviously, we'd rather
Yeah.
have Botman back, but it's insane
I
how
don't think,
defensively
Michael,
sound we are.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure that we need to be as tight as we were playing against Arsenal, playing against Liverpool. Manchester
Yeah,
United are really struggling in front of goal. They haven't scored since the international break. And I mean, they've had some good results.
yeah,
I think they was it a narrow loss to Forest. They drew and should have
yeah,
and looked like they should have won at home in a goalless draw against Manchester City.
yeah,
They haven't scored, and they ain't going to win if they don't score.
yeah.
And you're then asking, well, will Newcastle be able to score? I think over 90 minutes
Within 5 minutes.
they will be able to score, which will put us through on a win. Tom's guess last night uh, from the Manchester United podcast was that they would be beaten 2-0. And I think that's wishful thinking, personally, because I think even the strongest team will have a few players rested because
Yeah,
they'll be looking at this second leg game against Lyon,
yeah,
and
100%.
I fear for them. I do. If they put the
Yeah,
kids in, that is a big atmosphere to chuck kids in. It might inspire them, or it might scare them to death.
yeah, pressure makes diamonds, and we've seen it with Newcastle midfielder in the past. Matty Longstaff was thrown in against Man United, got the goal that won us the game. So it might happen with Man United. I can't really see it. I think we're professional enough to come out with a good performance. I think Leicester, we didn't really get out of first gear, if I'm honest. I thought Fabian Schär taking shots from the halfway line after 10 minutes showed you that we weren't really that bothered about the quality of the opposition, and rightfully so. But on that note, Iain, I'm going to ask you if you could do the second advert of the pod, this one from Zencastr.
I've gone old school again, Michael. I hope you don't mind. It's just that's the one I've got on my computer still. I'll have to get the new one sent to me.
Doesn't
Do you have a
mind me.
story to tell that the world needs to hear? Have you struggled with reaching new audiences who are engaged with your story? It might be time for you to start a podcast. Let me tell you about a platform we use here at Global Sports Podcast Network. Zencastr makes it easy to start a high quality podcast built for growth from day one. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes ums, ahs, your nose, and 22 other speech patterns, Zencastr makes it super easy to start a podcast that sounds great. Ready to tell your story? Check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Now, Ian, we've spoken about Manchester United. We've done our due diligence. Let's talk about the tune. We've won our last four. Our last fixture against Leicester, as we mentioned, very easy. Are you confident that Newcastle will pick up there? Well, you've just mentioned. You think maybe Man United fan picking 2-0 was a bit, let's say, generous to them. Are you that confident that we'll pick up the fifth win in a row?
I'm confident that we will win, given we approach the game with the right attitude.
Mm-hmm.
I sat through home games this season against West Ham, against Bournemouth, against Fulham. I sat
Yeah,
through all of those games. And if I'm honest, Bournemouth were excellent. I don't think we could
they
have
were.
done much about that. They were just so good on that day. Um, we ran out of ideas against West Ham and gave some stupid goals away. But I don't want to do that against Manchester United. So if we go in with the right attitude, I think we will win.
Yeah,
I had somebody trying to tell me that, oh, well, they've lost 3 out of the last 6 home games. That's in a run where we've won 11 of the last 15 games.
yeah,
So, we're in really good form. I think whoever it was that did the form tables for the last 15 games had Liverpool top and Newcastle a point behind in second. And I
yeah.
think that's where we are in terms of form within the Premier League since Christmas. So, yes, I think we'll win. I'm
To
not
be
doing
honest, I
prediction
absolutely
yet.
agree. No, not yet. And to be honest, I was about to give you exactly the same stat of Newcastle winning 11 of their 15, losing the other 4, obviously, since December 14th. Liverpool have won exactly the same. No one's won more. But at the same time, a victory, which would make it 12 out of 16, would mean that Newcastle would be the 4th team to pick up the double, winning both games over Manchester United in the Premier League, and that has not happened since 1958. So if there was any doubts at all that this is the worst Man United side in history, that tells you that's what it is. And obviously, they haven't lost 3 in a row at St James's as well since 1970. So there's going to be a lot of records broken on Sunday, and that probably is a bit of a spoiler as to how I feel the game's going to go as well. But before we get into that, I do want to get your opinion on a particular Newcastle player that you think will have an excellent game against Man United on Sunday.
Right. I'm expecting good things from Isak and Murphy together, the telepathy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm expecting Joe Linton to be the destroyer. I'm expecting Tonali and Bruno to have that telepathic link up where one's sitting, one's going forward, and it's not always the same way. They swap,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's what makes them so difficult to pick up. But my guess for man of the match is going to be Harvey Barnes. He's going to
Oh,
do something special. He's looked much more involved, much more threatening. He's gone
yeah,
past the fullback a few times in these last few games. He's got a fabulous relationship with Tino, and I think Tino will help him get into those positions where he cuts in and puts one in the top corner. He was very, very close against Leicester with
he
one of them,
was.
and it was another one that Connor Cody cut out. So he could have done it twice against Leicester. I just think they're going to start coming off. They've had another game together, so the understanding will be just that fractionally bit quicker. I think we'll see. That's my guess. Harvey Barnes. What, a
It's
brace? I won't go for a hat trick, but Harvey Barnes could
oh,
easily be the winner. He could be the
back-to-back
match winner.
braces for Newcastle wingers. I'd love to see that. And I do agree with Harvey Barnes. I think since being forced to come into the side, I mean, well, not against his will by any means. I'm sure he was delighted about Anthony Gordon's suspension. To being coming into the side at West Ham, I think he's been arguably one of Newcastle's best players,
He
behind maybe
has.
Sandro Tonalo. Sandro Tonali. And you can tell I've had
Sandro
a pint.
Tonalo. There's Tino Livramenti. Don't forget him.
Behind those
Tino
two,
Livramenti.
fantastic. But between Tanalo and Tina, I do think Harvey's been fantastic. I think it's one of those where West Ham, we expected to see something. He wasn't fantastic, but he was very good. Liverpool, again, you expected nothing, very solid. And I think it's one of those, he's going from strength to strength. And it really is going to give Eddie Howe some problems when Anthony Gordon is back, because you've got 2 in form. Well, I say in form wingers. Murphy coming back into form a little bit. Wasn't great the games beforehand, but you've got 3 wingers there who are really, really good.
Yeah.
Now,
Well, you say winger as well, Michael, but of course it's Harvey Barnes in the centre forward position, following up the save from Joe Linton's shot that's there to tap in the third goal against Leicester.
true.
Right, 6 yard box, tap in.
Yeah.
That's a centre forwards move.
Yeah.
So
He's
he's got a lot in his box.
Yeah, he's not just a standard winger. That's one of the brilliant things. I think Gordon, yeah, I would agree, is more of a traditional winger, but Barnes just loves cutting inside. He loves being in the box on the cutting inside or getting on the end of something. We saw a few times against Leicester, Murphy crossing the ball and Barnes is there at the back post. And you mentioned earlier, Connor Cody, he cut out a lot. And I think a lot of them were directed in Barnes' direction, particularly as Isak didn't even manage to get a shot away, which broke down a lot of bets, I'm sure. But if we're talking about bets, you can't have bets without making predictions. So, Iain, is it the usual?
Well, look, hey, I broke from the usual in my prediction. I thought we would absolutely stuff Leicester. I had us to
Yeah,
win 5 or 6-0. I tell you what, at half time, I thought I was bang on. That
yeah.
was such a boring second half.
It was
So
horrendous.
I'm not going to go quite so gung ho as that. I do think that it could be as straightforward as that, though. It depends how Man U go into this game. I
Yeah,
just thought if they know if the team if he's got to play the players who are going to play the second leg against Lyon and they're 2-1 down, let's say something like that,
yeah.
then even those players on Sunday, I don't think put 100% effort into the 50-50 tackles. They're not going to want to get
No,
injured. I just think that the circumstances are stacked in Newcastle's favour. I predicted last night on the crossover podcast that we would win 3-1. One,
yeah.
because I always do, but I didn't against Leicester, you see, so I don't always do. But I think
No.
3-1's fair enough. Um, and I think the goal that Man United score will be an own goal. How about that to really rub the
Oof.
salt in?
Oof. Now, well, if that comes off, definitely we should all have had a bet on it because the 3-1, Ian Mackay, it's always there. The only thing is, it's that Man United goal. And to be honest, I don't see it. I think if they play the kids, they've got a chance. And by the kids, I obviously don't mean like the under 16s. I mean the likes of Obi Collier, like you mentioned. I can see it being pretty much the same as it was when we played them earlier in the season. 2-0. I think we'll pretty much have too much for them in midfield. Tonali and Bruno, they've got more than enough about them to get the better of Ugarte and Casemiro. Leaves either, well, even Joe Linton is part of that. One of them is going to be free pretty much at all times. And it's probably going to be Sandro Tonali who will dictate the game. I do think we'll score early. And I think we'll see what we've seen a few times from Newcastle this season. They get an early goal, they get a lead going into half time, and they just try and slow the game down. And we saw against the likes of Forest, didn't work as well as what we'd wanted it to. But Manchester United are a very different side, and I don't think they'll have enough to get even a goal against Newcastle, unfortunately.
Okay.
I think an informed Man United, probably different, but right now, I think we're just too good for them.
I get where you're coming from on that, Michael. I would point out that because I haven't got tickets for Sunday. The ones that Joanne couldn't get me, which is a shame, but I have been at the last four. I was there when Matty Longstaff scored his winner.
Yeah,
Um, the Newcastle crowd is always up for Man U. I think it's still the
of
biggest
course.
draw of the season. I don't think that crowd will allow Newcastle to take a course like they did against Leicester. But certainly playing Manchester United, we've never misfired against them, other than in that cup final.
Yeah.
Certainly not at St James's Park. We are always up for it at St James's Park. Sunday afternoon, maybe we already know that there's been some surprise points dropped by Forest, by Arsenal, by Man
Ooh.
City,
Yeah.
and there's a little bit of extra incentive there to really secure the Champions League spot. I think it'll be more one-sided than you're giving them. I don't think we'll hold them off. I think we'll keep going.
Fair.
It's
So
all about goal difference. We're 4 goals behind Chelsea, so they'll want to get that
true.
the right way round in our favour as quickly as possible.
Yeah. It's a great point. And that will, to be honest, we'll leave it on that. That is all from us as Newcastle take on Manchester. Well, the Manchester Reds, should we say, on Sunday. Which team will reign supreme? Which team will be the real United? And why will it be Newcastle? And no, that's not a prediction. That is a spoiler. See you later.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.